All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And I'm just gonna, Lindsay, I'm gonna mute you. But we do like these webinars to be kind of open. So, you know, as we're going through everything, if there's something you want to ask us, feel free to put it in chat or even come off mute. So let's get started. Today's webinar, what interior designers don't know about copywriting but should. This is such an important topic. It is the key to having really great marketing. It is so important. Let's start off with some housekeeping. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, type them into the chat. We have Taylor here who's kind of monitoring the chat, and if you have any technical issues, definitely let her know and she'll help. But we will answer them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A, or we might even just answer them as we're going through everything. But feel free to reach out, ask your questions. This is definitely, you know, packed with education. We're here to help you. Mm-hmm. So to get to know us, we are Home Designer Marketing. There's me and there's Ashley, there's Taylor, and we have a pretty big team of writers, programmers, other designers. We are both trained graphic designers. I'm also a fine artist, and that is one of the reasons why we love working with interior designers. We help home design professionals transform their brands to attract their dream clients, sell projects for more, stay current online, and get their time back with automated systems. And our specialties include brand strategy, logo design, custom websites, copywriting, social media, automating processes with software. So a ton of stuff, and I'll just give you a sneak peek of like one of our brand transformation examples. I know I'm like biased, but I'm just totally in love with the work that we're doing. And I just am. So I just love it. I'm the logo designer. So this was the before, this was the after. Like, I'm also an illustrator. So I love like drawing this little bird and the logo and just making it beautiful. Like, I'm a person who loves to make everything beautiful. That's why interior designers are a good fit. This is Bowerbird's like website before. As you can see, it didn't have that. Like, it wasn't telling our story. It didn't have the content. It didn't have the look and feel. I always think the content drives the look and feel. The content drives how we're telling the story. Like, it's all tied together. It is so important. This is before, this is after. Like, every single one of our websites doesn't look the same because the content is different. They're different. The story is different. Like, everything is different. That is why it is so important to have the two working together. So I'm gonna step back and let Deb introduce herself. And we just have loved chatting. So I'm super excited to have her here today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Debra. I was really excited when you asked if I wanted to do this. I mean, I'll take any opportunity to talk about this stuff and just kind of geek out on the whole website copywriting scenario. I know it's a beast of a project for a business owner to take on, even when you're hiring it out. It just feels like such a big commitment, and all the things are overwhelming about it. So we want to try to make that easier and more approachable for interior designers. So I'm Deb Mitchell, and I am a brand messaging strategist and copywriter for interior designers. I've been working exclusively with interior designers for about 5 years. Before that, I was a freelance writer writing in lifestyle publications, a few business-to-business publications as well. But I eventually sort of slated into like interior design features. So, you know, going to these beautiful homes in the Charlotte, North Carolina area and interviewing the designer, the architect, the builder, the homeowner, and telling the stories of those homes. But what I found is that I really wanted to tell the stories of the interior designers and help them improve their businesses. So I eventually pivoted and started writing their websites. So yeah, what I really do though is writing custom but strategic brand messaging, and we'll talk about what that is today, and website copy. And really all of the marketing, because as Debra said, the content, everything is tied together in a website. Really everything's tied together in terms of your communications about your business and your brand. There's nothing that's done just in a silo. And it should all be related and cohesive. We feel the same way about that you all feel about making a home look and feel cohesive. We want your brand communications to look and feel cohesive. It makes a difference for how people experience you. So yeah, I've also done many websites for fine artists and product creators and design coaches and people that are adjacent. But I would say probably 90% of my clientele are interior designers at all stages of the business, all different aesthetics, and all over the country and even the world.
That is so true. It's like your content, your copywriting, your messaging needs to be consistent everywhere. That is your overall brand. So I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. See, we can talk. So
yeah.
buckle up, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you guys to understand this. Like, people don't care about your business. They only care about how your company can solve their problem. You know, your customers are selfish. They just want to, sometimes I always say that, think of your customer as like a spoiled teenager. It is all about them. Right? It is all about them. They don't care about you. If you think about your business that way, you know, and the conversation that you're having with people, I always think about it this way too, is the copywriting is like you're having a conversation with somebody. And you wouldn't have a conversation starting that is talking all about yourself, right? People would get, if I started a conversation and it was like, oh, I've won all these awards and I worked for all these people, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm like done with her. I'm going to go do something else. Right? So we're going to talk about that today. Today's agenda, copywriting. We're going to talk about the benefits, the best time to hire somebody, qualities to look for, copywriters that specialize, working with the copywriter, creating great copy, content strategy, brand messaging, brand voice, ideal client, website homepage content, additional content. So we're going to cover all of it. So we're going to start off with, what are the benefits of having well-written website copies? Like, why should I even bother?
Yeah. And I mean, it's a good question. I'm actually working on a blog post now that's addressing, like, are they ever going to read? Are people do people even read my website content? Like, should I invest in this? I mean, and really to this question, what are the benefits? It kind of depends on what your definition is of well-written copy, right? So well-written can mean it's free of errors and it's, you know, it's grammatically correct. That could be well-written. But for me, my philosophy is that this isn't about writing in the way that we wrote in school. This is about connecting with people. It's a relationship builder. So when you're communicating, it's important how you say it, but it's also important what you say. And it's important that you understand the listener well enough to know what you need to tell them and how you need to say it. So, you know, if you approach your website copy like that, the benefits are that, I mean, they're infinite, that you're creating an impression with your ideal clients. First of all, you're capturing the attention of your ideal clients, and you're forging a connection with them, and you're answering the questions that are in their mind that are going to stop them from reaching out to you. So you answer those questions and they do reach out. You're putting out even a stop sign to your non-ideal clients. If you really do this right, and I mean, it is very complex and layered, and we'll get into some of that, but if you have well-written website copy from the way that I look at it as being well-written, you're going to put out a stop sign for your non-ideal clients and a welcome mat for your ideal clients. And those ideal clients are going to have an experience with you before they ever talk to you. You're going to earn their trust, before you ever have a conversation. What do you think about that, Debra? Do you think about those kinds of things when you're doing websites, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really loved one of the points that you made, that because people always say this to me, like, people don't really read websites. Okay, I get that. There's different types of brains. Okay, there's like creative brains. There's like people who read, people take in and learn different ways. Like, I'm a person that's like, I'm a creative, so I'm more of a visual, right? Where I listen to audiobooks, where my daughter is more like a reader and she wants to read everything and she wants to have a paperback, like a paperback book, right? So there's different types of minds. Typically interior designers are more the creative type, so they might think that everybody is like them and they're not reading the content. Well, that's not right, because there are some people that want to be reading the content because that's how they comprehend. And then just think about, like, one of the things I think is super important about, bridging the copy with the website is the hierarchy of elements. So taking the copy and making like certain messaging stand out more. So if somebody is like a skimmer or not a reader, they're going to get the main messaging super quick. If somebody wants more of the detail, then they can read more of the detail. And Google is not going to rank a page that has no copy.
Right.
And they want unique copy. They want keywords. They want, like, if more people are scrolling down the page, if more people are reading, spending time on that page, they are going to rank that page higher. Your users are going to you're going to build more trust with those people if they're spending more time on that page. So that's why it's like, one cannot work with the other. You can't have a website without the good copy. You can't have the copy good without the good website design. Like, they work together.
They do. And we've talked about this, Debra, that, I think people always expect me to say, okay, just invest your money in the copy because I'm a copywriter. But I don't believe that. I think they're all equally important. I think your photography is, of course, wildly important.
Absolutely.
I think your brand visuals, like what Debra and her team create, the logos, the patterns, the colors, the fonts, and the layout of the site, and how the site functions, and the website copy, like, they're all equally important. I know that's hard for y'all because sometimes you feel like you can't invest in all of the things all at once, right? Like, who really can? But I feel like creating the cohesiveness between the look and the feel and the function of the website, like Debra builds, and the copy is so powerful. It creates an experience that is memorable and that just works. And like, the process is easier for you if you do both of those things at the same time, by the way. Yeah,
and I always tell people, like, if they're a smaller business and they don't have like as much to invest, let's say they're a startup business, still invest in doing really good copy, really good design, all those touch points, right? Making sure your website is secure, functional, like all those things are super important. Do it on a smaller scale. don't have as
Yes.
many pages.
Exactly. That's exactly what
Like,
I tell people.
It's so important to have it done right, have good copy, have the design, have like the messaging, all those things, and the functionality. Even if you're doing a 2 or 3 page website,
Yes.
versus, if you could do like a 5 or 7 page website, then those definitely will build more trust, but maybe you don't have the investment for that right now. Maybe you can start out with the smaller one and then grow into it as your company grows.
Yep. I'm not surprised that we tell people the same thing, Debra. We share so many of the same philosophies. I say the exact same thing. And I say the same thing if you don't have a lot of photography. Skinny down your website, fewer pages, and then you can build from there.
Yeah. When is the best time to think about using or hiring a copywriter? This one's a great one.
Well, I mean, it's the simple answer to that. The short answer is before you did think about it, because most people think about it as, kind of an afterthought. Well, let me hire the website people, and I know I'm going to need my copy later, so I'll get to that later. But I mean, I just liken it so much to what y'all do as interior designers. When a client says, oh, when should I bring the designer on? Shouldn't I hire the architect and the builder and get the construction process started and then hire the designer? And you're going, well, you can, and we could work that way. But if you want me to weigh in on all the plans and the layouts and make sure that you're being advocated for with your architect and your builder, and that you have this cohesive design and all the blah, 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 right? It's the same thing. So the sooner you bring your copywriter onto your website project, the better. Now, that's not to say, if you already got started, because a lot of people just don't know that. If you already get started with a website person and you need to bring your copywriter on later, fine. But I would say just the earlier, the better. Because also the writer needs some runway. I mean, it doesn't take 15 minutes to write this really good layered copy that's, has these elements that we're talking about today. It takes time.
And I think that there's 2 different types of, I feel like, website developers. There's a kind that they just have a standard template, and any copy they're just dumping into that. Right? So, or there's a website that's designed, it's a custom design that is actually taking your story into consideration and taking your story and telling that story visually. So for example, let's say that you offer certain services, or like they might be laid out differently. Like you might the copy might be different because maybe you want to highlight certain ones and you want to just list others, or even your portfolio, how you're telling that story. Maybe it's better told in a case study format because you're doing really custom big projects, or maybe you basically do the same kind of style and design for everybody, and that portfolio is more just like a long list of pictures, right? Or like totally different depending on what you're offering and what your overall goal and strategy is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's kind of back to what you were talking about of the hierarchy of elements. I mean, it's weird to say, but I feel like a big part of what I do as a writer, and Lindsay, thank you for asking that question about copy. We'll get to that. I'm so glad you asked that. And we probably should have specified that. But the hierarchy of elements, a big part of what I do as a writer is I organize the information. I organize the messages, and I'm doing that so that it makes sense and no one's confused, because a confused mind never buys. But B, so that, like you said, Debra, certain things are going to stand out and stick. And, you want certain key messaging to sort of pop out more. And that can even help create an emotional experience. So Lindsay, to your question, what is copy? When we're talking about copy on your website, it's really every bit of text. It's your tagline, it's any kind of image captions, project descriptions, it's your home about, portfolio, services, all the pages. It's any copy that's there. When I'm writing copy, I do every bit of those things. I work on the the contact form. We address anything and everything that needs to be written. We touch on what's in your footer. And when I'm working with someone like Debra, they may have already handled that with the client and figured out what the contact form needs to be and what kind of questions need to be there. And maybe I'll just look at it to make sure that the questions are going to make sense to your prospects. But it's anything and everything that's written there. So because I want that cohesive feel and that cohesive experience and a meaningful experience, I never go in and just write their bio or just write their service descriptions. I write the whole entire website. Does that answer the question? Copy is the text.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
And then what qualities should I look for when hiring a copywriter?
Yeah. I think that kind of goes with what your goals are. If your goal is to just get it off your plate and have a copywriter do it, and you don't feel very attached to it sounding a certain way or feeling a certain way, and you just feel like I'm going to let an expert do it, and there's not going to be a lot of revisions because I'm not picky that way, which, let's be clear, doesn't describe a lot of interior designers, right? You guys, it's a personal brand.
I don't think that's a good strategy. That's what not to do.
That's what not to do. Maybe if you were an accountant, that might make sense. Even then, I wouldn't say it's the best approach, but some people are like that, and that's what they want to do. So if you're looking for more than that, and you're looking for effective copy that is really reaching and connecting with those ideal clients, the qualities, not the qualifications, let's just say the qualities. I think empathy is huge. And actually, empathy, every personality test I ever take, I'm like off the charts on the empathy scale. And also, like, no one ever cries alone with me. Like, I burst into tears when somebody else is crying. I feel what they feel. But I think, a writer who's writing website copy is almost acting as a translator between you and the client. So that writer needs to be able to understand you and how you're looking at things and why, and understand your client and how they're looking at things and why. And then they can, translate by writing the right information that client is wondering about and what you want the client to know into the right words that are going to connect with the client and that are going to represent you the way you want to be represented. It's a very intermediary kind of position. So I think empathy is the biggest thing. And, how do you find that out? I don't really know. I don't know how you find that out.
Yeah, I think the thing that, it makes me think of that everybody who's buying, like hiring an interior designer, typically they're buying from you because they want a different emotional response from their space that they're in, that they're currently having, right? They want to feel differently in the new space. Like your cell is an emotional cell, right? So you need your copywriter and your designer to like understand that. Like, sometimes there's a big disconnect between the emotion that you get when you're reading the copy or the messaging and the actual marketing and the actual look of your work. And I say that because, like, think about, this is a good exercise to do that I know I do when I'm designing logos. Pick 5 words that express, like give you an emotional response of the work that you're doing. Like think of 5 words and then think about when you say those words, how you feel, and then look at your marketing or read your messaging and be like, do those match up or do they not match up? Right? Because a lot of times I was just talking to somebody the other day and they were describing their business as like super warm and customer service. And then I look at their marketing and it was like,
Yeah.
not that at all, right? The whole brand, the messaging, nothing, like there was a whole disconnect. You want to really think about what is the emotional response.
Yeah.
Pick 5 words. And to me, that really helps me. If I like I'm designing a logo and I have 5 words in mind of the emotion that I want to get, and it's describing that person, that company, and then I start designing and I look at the design and I'm like, does that give me the right look and the right feel? If I'm saying yes, I know I'm going in the right direction. If I'm saying no, then it's not.
That is a brilliant little kitchen table exercise, Debra. I like that for designers for y'all to, sit down and think of those emotional words. You probably already know them. And they're probably words that you use to describe your interior design aesthetic and the aesthetic that you deliver. Even if you really are working within your client's design styles and you don't have a signature aesthetic, you're still trying to make it either warm and welcoming or maybe very polished and elegant or whatever those words are. So when you put the emotion behind that, to run your website and your brand and your copy, your existing stuff through that filter and go, am I getting these words from that? Am I getting that feeling? And I mean, the answer's not, that is a brilliant exercise. I really like that. Super
I
smart.
really like that. And then I wanted to make a comment about the qualities to look for when hiring a copywriter.
Yeah.
For one, like, don't go design. I wouldn't recommend hiring somebody to design your website without the copy first. Like, I feel like the copy should always be first. And from my experience, I've had like one client in this space who has wrote really good copy, but that is very unusual. Like she had a copywriting background. But I would not write your own copy. That would be my recommendation. If you don't have as much of a budget, then do less pages, like do it right. But whoever you hire, like think about it in these 3 like steps. Make sure that whoever you're working with has a strategy process. Like they have a strategy for, the content writing, the messaging. They have a strategy. They have a process that they're going to bring you through, whether it's a questionnaire, it's an online meeting, it's like, whatever it is, making sure that it's just not like they're going to go away and write and never talk to you. That's not how you create like copy that's going to represent who you are.
No.
And working with somebody who's in the industry, I know we're going to talk about that coming up, but that's also a quality that I think is super important.
Yeah. Totally agree. And what's coming to mind as you're talking is, and this is a very important point, there's a big difference between someone who's a good writer and someone who's a copywriter. So, I've had a lot of people come to me saying, oh, I'm going to have my best friend's sister-in-law write my copy because she's a really good writer. Okay. That goes back to, do you want your website to be grammatically correct? And that's your only goal for your, if that is, then maybe best friend's sister-in-law can do that just fine. But a copywriter has marketing know-how. That's the biggest difference. So the strategy that Debra's talking about is all about marketing and understanding marketing best practices. Now, when we talk about specialization, marketing for interior designers is a very nuanced and very different than marketing for other industries.
Because it's emotional.
Because it's emotional.
It's
and
different.
Also because it's luxury, and because it's, typically pretty significant investments, and it's their home, and it's all of these things. You guys have very complicated businesses in terms of you have crazy complicated accounting, for one thing. And you're wearing a lot of hats, and your marketing is just as complicated. If you hire just any writer, you're going to fall flat with reaching out to that. And you don't want you certainly don't want just, a sales writer who's going to flash the buy now sign. That's not your client. And you guys know that. And it's, so many people, if I had a nickel for everybody who told me I had this writer, I thought they knew what they were doing, but it was too heavy-handed, it's hard sales, it's pushy, it's important that your copywriter understands that.
Yeah, because you're trying to get that emotional response, and really good copywriting and having the design so it's telling that story. That is the key. Like it's one of the most important things to getting your ideal clients.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what is going to attract your ideal client to you. And then the other thing I want to point out is like having that type of content builds trust. So having the design, the copywriting, the strategy, the messaging, and the design and the functionality of how things are programmed, making sure your website's secure, and all of those things build trust. Yeah. Like before you even have a conversation with them. If you're thinking that you're not getting any leads from your website, but then when you talk to somebody in person, they totally love you and then hire you, and then after they're working with you, they find out all this stuff that they didn't know that you did. That means that you're not communicating that in your copy. Mm-hmm. So that's another good sign. If you're pay attention when you're, working with customers, if they're saying, oh my gosh, I'm so happy about this, or oh my gosh, I didn't know you did this, or thank you for taking care of this, I had no idea, take notes of those things. Yeah. Tell your copywriter. Yes. Yes. That means there's a disconnect there. Yep. So why should I hire a copywriter that specializes in interior design? I know we already touched on this a little bit. Yeah. What I just said about it being a very nuanced type of marketing for your industry. But also if you've ever had an experience working with a website designer or a copywriter that does not specialize in the interior design industry, you probably understand that can be super frustrating, because it is very hard for them to understand what you need from them. So, just even me understanding, I've worked in-house with an interior designer, and took her essentially her sales calls, and she took me to High Point Market, and I've been to installs and photo shoots and all those aspects. I've done procurement. So I understand those inner workings that you're not necessarily going to represent directly in your copy, but the writer needs to know that to understand some other, ways of representing your process. They need to understand that procurement phase where the client thinks nothing is happening is, your ducks under the water and there's tons of stuff going on, and that you need to be compensated for that. Your fees are partly based on that. You're not going to say it that way, but a writer who knows that can represent it. Such a good point, because like communicating your process and how you work and everything you're delivering, like that's going to help you get paid more for your projects. It's also going to help build a lot of trust. So that was like such a key point.
Yeah. And yes, it builds trust. And yes, to the value point, when I am working with an interior designer on their copy, everything they tell me, I'm asking in my mind, okay, how does that benefit their client? They're telling me this about their, previous career, previous work experience. How does that benefit their client?
Absolutely.
They're telling me this about their project. How does that benefit their client? And is there a way to spin in the copy to add, show it as added value, show it as another reason why you're worth every penny, and more. So that's how I'm approaching that. And to not understand all of the moving parts of design projects is going to be harder for a writer to ask that question and understand where those benefits are that kind of have that dollar sign value behind them. And I'm making it sound gross. I don't mean that. You know what I mean, that you do really great work and you're worth an investment, right? And you're worth being paid, and not just, letting scope creep happen and, you're doing your work for free.
Yeah. Having a process and communicating that sends a message that you're a real business. You've done this a ton of times before. It sets you apart from them feeling like you're doing this on the side as a hobby.
Yes. Yes.
So if you're looking at a company online and their website isn't looking professional, the copy isn't looking professional, they're going to think that you're doing this kind of like as a hobby. It's not a real business. Like you guys, more than I think even other companies, need to make sure that people see you as a like real professional business. It'll build more trust. You'll get paid more. It's just so important.
It definitely is.
Is it better to have a copywriter work without you or with you as like part of you? I think we've already answered some of that.
Yeah. When we were talking about just getting it off your plate, and that's just usually not going to yield the results that you want. For you to think, okay, I can just hand this project off and maybe give them some information up front about my services and my team and whatever, some bullet points about my bio, but they should be able to figure out how to create that emotional experience. You're not going to get there that way. You just to help you understand a little bit of what I mean, my process it's about a 4 to 6 week process. And we take the first 2 weeks and devote it to the brand messaging, which it's the building blocks of your copy. And you also fill out a pretty extensive questionnaire for me. So, I mean, sorry, not sorry, kind of like, I hate that, you guys have to do that kind of homework, but at the same time, what my clients have found is that they start getting clarity around their business that they've never, ever had as they're filling out that questionnaire, because I'm digging deeper and deeper and deeper to understand their clients, to understand them, and all these things that I'm talking about how does something benefit your clients? We're looking for your differentiators and the things that we need to pull to the surface in your copy. But that means we've got all this other information that you're getting at. And what's happening in reality is it's all in your head. You're just unpacking it. You're kind of sifting through it and editing through it and starting to realize what has greater meaning for your clients. You're too close to it. We're all too close to our own businesses, like to really be able to have that point of view on it, to have that perspective. So to have someone asking you those questions first I do it in the workbook, and then I do it on a 2-hour project kickoff call where we go even deeper, that, they come out with things and I'll take notes, and my clients will come out with things that I put in the copy that they go, that is brilliant. That's perfect. And I'm like, you said that. And they didn't even know they said it exactly that way.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear yourself. It's hard to know what's in your own head. And it's certainly hard to know what's important to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing that people also don't realize is it'll improve your sales, because
It does.
that messaging, once you get more clarity and that like messaging is, on your social media pages, on your website, like all over, and you've defined who you are and who you're serving and everything, you're going to start having better sales conversations
You
with
do.
people. That's what we find happens over and over. So what are some steps to creating great copy? I know I've said at least, like, we do a brand strategy position, whatever people call it, like strategy is number one, right? Having a process for creating that like strategy, and then working with your writer or your team, working with them as a team, like making sure that you're working together. Believe it or not, we are not mind readers. Yes, we know about your industry, like Deb's been in the industry longer than me, but we can, like, if you want to tell us, if you want your ideal client and build trust with people and be different than your competition, you need to work with us so we have the opportunity to pull out and figure out those like key, what makes you unique. That's what makes great copy, telling your story, your unique story.
Yes. Yeah. So, talking about this, selling emotion and all that kind of stuff is absolutely true. And a huge part of that is differentiation, right? So, you could say, hey, I want this person's exact copy and plagiarize it, which don't do that. But I'm just saying, like, if somebody else has great copy, if you tried to employ that same thing, it's not going to work because it's not authentic to you and it's not differentiating you. So,
and it's illegal.
It's absolutely illegal. 1,000% illegal. And I have seen it happen. I've literally seen interior designers.
So I just want to say, we as an agency have had other agencies completely copy our website.
Yep.
And it killed our SEO for quite a while, and it's definitely illegal. So
do not do that.
Do not ever do that.
Do not ever do that. Yeah. And I mean, I think the first step in creating that copy is, sort of defining your goals with your website team and your copywriter. Define those goals. Who are you trying to reach? Are you working in the market with the clients you want to work with? You just want more of that? Or do you need to up-level your clientele? Are you getting the right kind of clients, but you're only getting 1 and 2 room projects and you want more whole home projects? They can help you figure out, you need to discuss those things. There's almost a business coaching aspect to what we do in that strategy piece. And I almost hesitate to say it because I'm not a business coach, and please don't just take my business advice. Like, I don't know that I want to be responsible for that for anyone, but you can't separate out your business's structure and your service offerings and your pricing and all of those strategies. You can't separate out, from what you need to communicate and how we need to put these websites together to make them truly effective. Does that make sense?
They all work together. Absolutely. And what is a content strategy and why is it important? I know we've touched on it already. I just want to make one comment about content strategy. I consider the whole strategy as, like, we call it a brand positioning strategy. So it's positioning you to attract that ideal client, right? And I also want to say that it's also like that content strategy. Think about where you want your business to be.
Yes.
Like if you're not attracting that ideal client now, position your marketing to be like connecting with them.
Mhm. Absolutely. Let me just also say content. So when you're talking about your website, the content of your website are the brand visuals and the colors and the fonts and your photography and your copy. It's all of those puzzle pieces. And strategy is what should they be? What exactly should those puzzle pieces be? And how do we need to put them together? So that comes back to that sort of marketing know-how kind of a piece. But having a content strategy is all about, yes, what you said, Debra, what are your goals? Who are you trying to work with? And what I would also say, what are your challenges right now? What's not working in your business? We need to know what
Good point.
is you're frustrated with, so that we can help you overcome that. And whenever you're communicating to someone, it's just a principle of communication that you have sort of challenges and you have opportunities, and you want to overcome the challenges with your communication, and you want to capitalize on all the opportunities. So without being too sort of academic textbook about it, this is just to say that that strategy needs to be working towards something. I know you want your websites to look a certain way, and there are some industry standards for that. In your interior design industry, you want to look like a high-end interior designer, and that's good. And yes, we absolutely do that. Debra absolutely does that. But we also need to think about your clientele and need to think about where you are geographically. What's your service area that you're serving? All those kinds of things are part of the strategy that decide what those pieces are and how they should come together on your website.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And something else that I like to consider too, on top of that, is what is the investment for your clients in the total project? So for example, if the client investment is like, let's say they're doing a huge custom home that's like $1 million plus whatever, right? They're actually trusting you for the whole project. You might not be getting paid that much, but they're trusting you that you're going to guide them through that whole project. Versus, let's say the project is a staging project, or just like hiring you for a designer for the day. The trust that needs to be built for those different types of services is totally different. Yes. So like if somebody comes to me and they're a new business and their services that they're selling are more decorating or something like that, there's nothing wrong with any of the services, but you aren't going to need to build as much trust with that type of client to get that sale than you are to if you're doing a high-end custom, full projects, design, build, and everything, right? They're totally, the amount of investment is huge. Mm-hmm. So I might say to the person who's doing the smaller projects, like, they don't need to invest as much into their marketing. Maybe we don't need as many pages because they don't need to build as much trust. If your goal is to have those higher end clients and do like those bigger projects, you need to invest in making your marketing look like you're that type of company.
Yes. Yeah. Credibility is hugely important. I mean, and you're right, Debra, that what are the stakes for the client? If the stakes are much higher when they're building that custom home, yes, the investment, but also the process. That process can be hellacious for them if they don't have you standing in the gap for them. And you need to be able to show them on your website, why they can trust you to do that, why you're not going to make it harder for them.
Yes.
Why? You're going to make their lives a lot easier and give them the amazing result at the end.
Yeah. And I think so many companies don't share their process of how they work with people. And I really think that that's like a little secret element that is so important.
I agree.
Okay, so what is brand messaging and why is it important? And I know these last slides, we just have like 8 minutes left. So
Okay. I'm glad you said that. I'll be quick. So brand messaging is, like I said before, kind of the building blocks of your copy. So brand messaging is, I almost think of it as talking points about your brand. They're talking points that are very important and need to be well thought out and strategic though. So when I create brand messaging for my clients, I do it for every client, no matter what kind of project we're doing with them. We do the brand messaging first, and we do brand messaging as a standalone offer. And we're creating bits of copy for them around things like their values and how their values intersect with their clients' values, and brand describing language to give you guardrails around how you talk about your aesthetic, how you talk about your service process and your service experience. Really, all of it is, it kind of gives you a container of how to talk clearly and confidently about your business. And they're pieces of messaging that are, like one piece of brand messaging is an elevator pitch, right? And I don't usually give those to my clients because they usually already have them and they're good. But if you think about all the other things that you need to talk about in your business, that's not just in the elevator pitch, that's brand messaging. What are your talking points around the services you provide? What are your talking points around your process? What are your talking points around who your clients are? What's your talking point around what your service area is? All these kinds of pieces and parts, we create those on the front end and put them into their copy, but it's also messaging that you can use in-house for everything else, all of your communications.
yeah, I think that is so good. And then I just want to add, we already talked about it, but the hierarchy of that messaging is key. So working with a designer, that's why working with the copywriter and your designer, so they can have the copywriter create the messaging, and then the designer needs to design your website, your whatever they're doing to tell that story. So think about if you're designing a room. I'm actually an oil painter too, right? So I always think about it. I had an oil painting teacher who was amazing, who says, if everything is a focal point, you have nothing as a focal point, right? So when you're designing a room, if everything is screaming at you, it's loud, it's busy, it's overwhelming, it is not a nice space to be in, right? If you have a hierarchy of what you're bringing people through as they're experiencing the room, right? That's the same as the design on your website, where you have the hierarchy of messaging and it is bringing people through the experience. Yes. If you have a website where everything is shouting at you, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, just like the room, I'm done. I'm yes. Overwhelmed. I'm turned off. I'm going to go look at somebody else.
Yes, definitely true, Debra. And what we do is, after creating this brand messaging, then we start making decisions about what is going to be the most important for the clients to hear. What message should be kind yes. of the statement messaging. For some clients, it might be something about their values. For other clients, it might be something about their unique design point of view, or whatever it is, or a business, background, the way they run their business. Whatever the key kind of messaging is will rise to the surface as we understand you and your business more and more, and as we develop out that messaging. And then we can apply that in a hierarchical way to the website copy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then brand voice.
Yeah. I think most of my clients understand kind of what brand voice is and how important it is. They're very tied to and invested in what their copy sounds like. And it is also back to the emotional, the feeling that they're trying to create. So you might want your brand voice to sound very polished and professional, but also warm and welcoming. Okay, so, how do you achieve that? And when I think about brand voice, I really do think about it on a sliding scale for each of my clients between polished and professional and warm and welcoming, as a matter of fact. Some need to sound a little more to the polished side. Some need to sound a little more to the warm and friendly side. But then also there's these other elements of who you are. So again, we're trying to craft an experience where they feel like they already know you before they've ever spoken to you. So that means we need to infuse your brand voice with something that is representative of you so that it will feel familiar when they talk to you, and it won't feel like a disconnect, record scratch moment. And they're like, this is not the person I thought this person was based on the website and how it sounds. But I also wanted to sound your brand voice to feel authentic for you. Put it like putting on a dress. Do you feel good in it? Do you feel confident in it? Does it feel like you? So it might not sound exactly like how you would talk, but it should have notes of that. It should have a note of authenticity. So
absolutely. How can I create copy that will attract my ideal client? I think that strategy part is key. That's what I would say. I think we covered that. This one is super important. What type of copy should I include on my website homepage? And I wanted to put this one in here because I look at so many websites that put about me content, about my business content, and don't have anything about your ideal client. You know how we started out talking about how a spoiled teenager, all they care about is them? If you're talking about yourself, they're going to leave.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I mean, also to, your point about Google, that Google rewards, a little bit more copy.
Yeah.
So having just a clean homepage that doesn't really have copy on it is not going to be too effective in that way either. But I also tend to like the homepage to give kind of a snapshot for the client that then they could go deeper into every aspect. So I like to touch on in the copy something about the services, something about the benefits that they deliver to the clients, definitely something that helps your ideal client see themselves and feel understood right off the bat. So something that's that pull that makes them go, oh my gosh, they get me. This is the person for me. Let me click in and learn more and more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I love using kind of the framework of how you would have a conversation. So a conversation would start out like listening to their problem. Like, what problem are you having? Oh, there's several solutions to solve that type of problem. And oh, by the way, we've done a ton of projects like this before. And here are a whole bunch of happy clients. And then here is a whole bunch of information about us if you're wanting to double check if you want to trust us. So think about it as you would have a conversation with somebody. That's the same way your content should be.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I just love that. Thinking about a conversation. Would I really start out with, oh, I've been in business? If I said I've been in business for 30 years and I've won awards for Apple and Intel, and which I have done all those things, but you would be like, oh my gosh, I'm done with her.
I don't know. I'd be intrigued, but I get your point on a website now.
I mean, I have done a lot. I've been in business a lot of years, so I've worked for some big companies, but that's not how you want to start off a conversation. It's more about them than about you. Somebody who's going to hire you for a big project, they want to make sure you're listening to them. You understand them. You know them. You've done projects for people like them. That's what they want. Is there additional content you recommend creating?
Yeah. I mean, I think copy-wise, the most important, I mean, it's all important, so it's a little hard to say, but at least I will say what I put the most time and work into usually is home, about, and services pages. I'm really, it's vital to me that we get your service descriptions right for what your clients need to see. We've got to make, business decisions about what you're offering and what your deliverables are. We've got to make sure we're making the promises that you can deliver and nothing that you can't always deliver, where we need to be clear versus being clever. Like, that's all really important. And the level of detail, it varies by who your clients are. So I put a lot of time into those, but I get the question a lot, should I write project descriptions for each of my projects? And that to me is an individual decision and an individual choice as well. I mean, I always prefer more opportunities to layer in more of your brand messaging. So that's a great opportunity for me to do that, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think you're okay to not have project descriptions. Blog, I always get asked, should I do a blog? I mean, Google loves a blog. Google will really reward you for that updated, material on your site.
I think of like, if you're doing a blog, I believe that it needs to be done correctly, and you have to have a goal and purpose for it. So
I agree with that too.
If you're just writing a blog and it doesn't have a strategy and you're not tracking the results and stuff, then it's not worth it. It's a lot to do, and so it needs to be worth the investment. And I think that is super important. Some other content, like a page that isn't as much content. Oh, I know what I was going to say, that the project description. I definitely think that it depends on who you're targeting. If you're trying to get whole house projects and they're like a huge investment, absolutely doing like a project case study with a description, because if you're just showing photos, it doesn't tell the whole story of all the value you're offering, all the problems that you solved, right? So the bigger the investment, or if you want to get bigger projects, then start creating like some content that's, sharing all the stuff that you're delivering. You guys you're delivering so much. You're doing an amazing job. I know that. But most of the time it's not being communicated.
Yep, agreed.
So thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I know we went a couple minutes over. I'm Debra Scarpa from Home Designer Marketing. If you're interested in transforming your brand, then feel free to book a consult with me. It's free, homedesignermarketing.com/schedule. You can just go to our website and there's also a link there. You can follow us on Instagram, and you're welcome, Gail. And then Deb here, I'll let you.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about today, or even, just about copy in general, something we didn't cover or something that's confusing. Happy to answer any questions. And certainly if you're either in the throes of a website project or thinking about transforming your website, and want to talk about working together, of course, love to have a call with you. Can follow me on Instagram. I'm Design Writer Deb. Yeah, I just really appreciate you all hanging in there while we talked your ears off.
Yeah. We have whoever wants to, thank you everybody for attending. Whoever wants to stay for a minute, feel free to come off your mic or put in chat any questions, or I'd love to get feedback of what you thought was like valuable, what tips you learned, what you're going to implement. Any of that is like super helpful. So how's everybody doing? Did everybody enjoy it? Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Oh, rough idea how much? That's a good question.
I think just
I'll let
schedule
Debra.
an appointment. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you'd like an
It's like-
appointment with either of us, then
It's
book
like
an
you guys.
appointment.
Every
Yeah.
project is different.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's like you guys. Yeah.
And we both offer a free consult, so feel free to book an appointment with either of us. We would love to talk with you about your brand, your content, your strategy. And we've loved having you here. And thank you so much, Deb, for joining me today. This has been a super fun conversation. And
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We are so passionate together about content, and in so many ways that we have
unapologetically.
we have the same thoughts. And I know that they're working for all our clients that we have as home designer marketing, and I have two businesses, Friday Marketing too. So I'm telling you, it is key to getting your ideal clients and getting paid more. It is the secret sauce. So thank you so much, everybody. Okay.
Thanks,
everybody. Bye. Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye.
Bye.